Welcome to Ask a Recruiter Live. I'm Becky Graham from Glassdoor, and we're here to help you navigate a job market that no longer plays by the rules. You sent us your toughest questions. Today, our guest answers them. No sugarcoating, just straight talk. And if that isn't enough, stick with us till the end for a rapid fire Q&A that will blow your mind. So, without further ado, please welcome the realistic recruiter, our guest, Mike Pedito. Mike, welcome to Ask a Recruiter Live.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so excited to have you. While people are still joining, we love to give our audience a chance to get to know you a little bit better. So I'm curious, what is one cringe professional behavior you are guilty of?
Oh, that's a great question. A cringe behavior I am guilty of for most of my career is I spent a lot of my career drinking the corporate Kool-Aid, and I still say corporate phrases and cliches all of the time. I cannot help it. It is just burned into my lexicon now. I circle back to things. I take things offline. It's what I'm going to say, and it's what I'm going to do. And you can put it on my tombstone if you want. Like that's just it's a behavior I cannot shake at this point, and I hate it about myself, but it's there.
What would be the corporate jargon that would be found on your tombstone if you could choose something?
Oh, I mean, it would absolutely be the free circle back because I say it nonstop. And I know, like on the internet, it's so easy to make fun of it, and you can get so many views talking about it. But like, you can say that I don't know how morbid to get, right? Just like he didn't circle back for one final time or whatever it might be, but put it on the tombstone because you'll hear me say it plenty.
It's amazing. If someone says that to you in a hiring situation, do they get to the top of the pile?
Straight to the top, automatic job. If I know that you can drop the corporate lingo with me, we're good.
Amazing. All right, so we have had so many questions submitted for today's conversation, so I want to get into it. But before we do, a couple housekeeping items. Today's show, like I said, was built around your pre-submitted questions. To those of you in the audience who sent them, thank you so much. We're really excited for today's conversation, but we still want to hear from you. So if you have questions for Mike, drop them in the Q&A box. It's at the bottom of your screen and upvote the ones you like, and we'll bring those into today's conversation. And if you're joining us from YouTube via live stream, welcome. Hello, we're so excited you're here. Drop yours in the comments box. All right, Mike, let's get into it. We received a few questions along these lines. I feel like I'm doing everything right, following all the advice online and getting nowhere. Why?
It's a great question, right? So you feel like you're doing everything right. You're hearing all the advice. You're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, and you're not getting the job. You're not moving forward. There's a million answers to it, but there's the couple things that stand out to me is one because there's no such thing as the perfect advice, right? There's no magic trick. There's no hack. And if this is the first time you're ever hearing me when we get together and we do something like this, it's important for me to say like anything I say to you isn't going to get you a job tomorrow. There's no guarantee to any of that. So I think that's one, right? Is hoping that just like hearing the right advice is going to get you a job. I think the other thing is understanding this job market is like nothing we've ever seen before. When it used to be easy to climb to the top of the list. It used to be easy to really stand out in the job search, and it's just simply not. And you're all hearing the same advice. You're all doing the same things. You're all qualified or not qualified. You all have similar experiences, and that's hard. And I think that a lot of it comes down to that. So a lot of what I talk about with candidates is being a little bolder, being a little bit less scared to lose the job, and taking a few more risks because there are no promises, there are no any of these things, and we'll probably get into some of this advice, I'm sure, and I'll say it now, and I can say it again to you later. But when somebody tells me like that sounds risky, I don't want to do that, I'm not supposed to do that, what I always sort of say to them with all due respect is, how is playing it safe going so far in this job search if you've been on it for a while?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It's really hard right now to stand out in the crowd because everybody is leveraging the same tools, they're following the same advice. And from the people I've talked to who are in the thick of their job search, the ones that are standing out are doing things differently. They're really going outside the box and finding unique ways to advance their applications or make themselves memorable in an interview. So, and we'll talk more about interviewing today because you're definitely an interviewing expert. Okay, so this is one that also came in that honestly, I was really hoping that someone would ask. So, yeah, Mike, give us 3 of the worst pieces of job search advice online right now.
Three of the worst pieces of job search advice online, and only 3 is what I would ask because there are a lot of them out there. Right. I think the biggest one, right? The one we all hear, and I know that like I'm going to say this, and maybe the chat will light up. My comments usually do, whatever it is, right? Is the idea of you have to beat the ATS. We can dive in a ton, but let me be very brief if I'm answering 3 things here to say that like beating the ATS is not a real term. It is something invented by people who typically have some type of stake and has something for you to use to beat the ATS. Right, the ATS is not doing what you think it's going to do. So anytime I see a creator out there saying like, "Here's how to beat the ATS. Here's the trick to do it," I know they've probably never managed an ATS system because nobody who has would think that that trick would work to beat it. The other thing, right, are these, what I alluded to earlier, sort of these like hacks and guaranteed paths. I see so many videos about like, oh, here's the answer I always give to get a job, or here's what to do in your resume to always move forward. That's BS. It's made up. And that person saying it probably hasn't even been on this job market. I always want to challenge those people like, oh, okay, let's watch, live stream it, go apply for a job, do that and see what happens. Right. There are no promises in this stuff. And all of my advice always comes with that sort of preface to it. Just like, we can try this, but if you're going to come back to me and say, I did this and it didn't work, I'm just like, yeah, the odds are it wasn't going to, because that's just how these numbers work in this world. And then the last one, this is a smaller thing, but I see this come up a lot. But when I hear about things that bug me, it ties to the other like guaranteed questions. But one of the other one of the other pieces of advice I do not like is when I see you being told online that you can close the interview and get the job by asking, do you have any hesitations about my candidacy at the end of the interview? I will say, if you are in sales, that can go great. Salespeople love it. They eat it up. Sure. If you're in sales, tune out to me saying don't do this. But everybody else, like, it doesn't make sense. It puts people on the spot. And I often hear job seekers say like, well, they put me on the spot. Why can't I put them on the spot? Like, all right, cool. Like, you won that internet point, I guess. But like, it didn't help you get the job. I hear people say like, I got a job because I asked this question. Like, it's far more likely you got a job and you asked that question, which is not the same thing. Right? If someone is not going to hire you, the last minute of the job interview is not going to be when they change their mind based on you asking them that, and then moving forward based on a great thing. They're probably not going to give you real feedback. They're probably going to say like, no, I have pretty much everything I need here. Or they're going to deliver feedback you can't overcome. And there's sort of no point to it anyway. It ends the interview on a negative note instead of finding a way to end the interview on a strength or something that can actually help you land the job.
Yeah, since you're given hot takes right now, I am curious, what is the most toxic career advice that you've seen out there?
The most toxic career advice out there. That's a great question because so many of these are. The most toxic career advice is the advice that's out there telling people things that will straight up not work. And the 2 examples I come to are people who say, lie about your education or make up companies you work for. Because yes, you can get through. There's an anecdote to everything. And I beg people all the time to stop arguing the exception to rules. It's annoying. But in general, all studies, all corporate roles will show you the majority of companies run checks on these things. It's actually very easy to do. I actually am in the middle of running one myself right now with both real and fake things on it just to show people what happens. But it's being held up and taking longer than I wanted because they're trying to verify all the lies I told in it. These lies come up and they do get verified. So that's toxic. And then combined with saying like, I can't answer that because I signed an NDA is the other big one, because that legitimately for most people makes you look stupid in a job interview. And I'm sorry to say that. I get it. What a callous thing for a recruiter to say. But the truth is, when your last job was like, marketing manager at, small company B, like whatever it might be. And it's not to insult that job, but that's what your job was, right? Like they didn't make you sign an NDA about like what you were doing since you left the company. And even if they did, the NDA really just means like you can't say, I worked on this specific client and here's what I did for them, right? You can still generally answer questions and talk about things. Like if your resume isn't like CIA and top secret clearance and this and that, the NDA thing doesn't make sense. And trust me, we hear it a lot. You have to remember, you see that video and you see that comment and you say, oh, maybe that's a good idea. And then I do an interview. And that week, I have 47 people tell me how they can't tell me what they were working on at that company because they signed an NDA. It just isn't helping you.
Yeah. Uh, Words that are not music to Mike's ears. I signed an NDA, so
Yeah. And if
way to
you
get
did, great. We can talk about it. We can work through it. But people who've actually signed an NDA, they know what their NDA covers and doesn't, and they know how to talk around what they're able to in the
Got
NDA.
it.
They don't just say, I signed an NDA and not answer anything.
Got it. All right. Well, I think we could move on now to interviewing. This is a topic that you love to talk about online. And our audience really showed up with the questions for this one. So let's start here. I don't have a ton of time to prep for every interview. What should I focus on getting right?
It's a great question, right? So if you don't have a ton of time to prep and you just want to get ready for an interview, I specifically talk about you can prep for most job interviews in 10 minutes and have pretty much all the information you need. Here's what you need to prep before most interviews. You obviously need to know something about what this company does, but that does not mean like a trivia and facts, right? You don't. I'm not impressed when somebody comes to an interview and says like, "Oh yes, your company was founded in 2024 and has fun." It's just like it doesn't matter. What I want you to know is how does a company make money and how does your role fit into that? And you can find that information in a few places, right? I always tell people start on the company website, go to their values page, and I get it. A recent study has shown that like only 1 out of 4 employees thinks their company lives by their values. I get we all think corporate values are just like corny language, and a lot of times they are. But companies think they live by their values, and they spend a lot of time writing them and putting them out there. So understanding the company values and how you can work that into your answer, right? Is accountability really important for them? Then guess what? When you talk about how accountable you are through the interview, you're going to look great. So you see their values, and then you spend some time on their news site because whatever they're posting on their company news site is like their corporate brag board. And then you look at their open jobs. And I say to do that because this is going to tell you a lot and help you raise questions. Are they hiring a ton? Is this the only open job? Is there a certain department that has a ton of open roles? All of this helps you frame answers and specific questions for them. And then I go out, I look at the company's financial information just to see if there's any news, any lawsuits or news stories. Not that you want to bring up a lawsuit necessarily to them, but it will, again, frame the way you answer things. And then I go to their LinkedIn page and I look at what employees are saying under the Employee Insights tab for a company. And you can actually see what like employees who work there are posting. I can use all of that to make 3 or 4 questions that I promise you nobody else is asking on the interview, and to frame my answers using like their magic buzzwords, right, their values in a way that is going to make them notice when they're doing. So that's 10 minutes, right? You can do that work in 10 minutes and feel like I can say more than most people are coming in here ready to say.
Right. Wow, 10 minutes. I mean, that's amazing, especially if you are a person who is deep in the interview cycle with multiple companies. You just don't have the time. When we were prepping for this conversation, Mike, you talked a little bit about the 4 core stories, and these are stories that you can prep for, that will help you answer any sort of question that will come your way during interview. Can you talk more about what those stories are and how to develop them?
Yeah. Yeah, so in prepping for interviews, I always tell people there's four stories. I call them the core four stories because it rhymes and it sounds nice. But you could hear this all sorts of ways. But there's four stories that I think if you know really well, you can answer pretty much every question on a job interview outside of technical questions. And those are your most successful project or biggest career success, your least successful project and your biggest career failure, your most difficult stakeholder you've ever had to deal with. And I do warn people this might be more than one story, right? This is very job dependent. You might have a client and customers if you're customer facing, you might have coworkers, you might have supervisors and executives, but just think difficult stakeholder stories. And then what I call like your passion project, which I know when we talk about work sometimes makes people like, yeah, passion. Like I get it, but really just sort of the idea about like what you like about your job and what excites you. Um, a good storyteller knows how to tell a good story, and I think we can get into sort of what that means. But when you know those four stories and can tell them, the good parts, the bad parts, the parts to leave out, there's very few questions that will come up that you can't tie back to those stories.
Yeah. For our audience, could you repeat those four stories again for
Yeah,
people
the
who
four
missed it?
stories you need to know: your most successful project at work, your least successful project at work, your most difficult stakeholders you've dealt with at work, and your passion at work. What gets you excited?
Great, great. Let's talk a little bit. You mentioned storytelling, right?
Hmm.
Um, why don't we dive a little bit into that topic around storytelling? I know like we only have so much time in interview process, right? So you want to make sure you check the boxes that the interviewer are looking for, right? To advance you to the next round. So um there's got to be a balance between the storytelling and sharing and ensuring that you're checking those boxes. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I bring this up, when I talk about storytelling on an interview and how to tell a good story and why does storytelling matter on an interview is almost the way that frustrates people more. Is because it is a key sign of communication. Think about outside of work. Think about the worst storytellers you know. Probably someone older in your family, an uncle, your father, your grandfather, whoever, right? Who cannot tell a story and is all over the place, and you can't follow it, and you don't know what is going on. And think about working with that person, and that is tough, right? Think about the coworker who, when you need something from them, you get a 10-minute answer when you just needed a 1-minute answer from them. We can say that stuff doesn't matter, but it does. So when we talk about like telling a story on an interview, uh, you know, we always go back to the STAR method. And I get it. People hate the STAR method. And I think there's a big misunderstanding of the STAR method. And, the STAR method to me is, I think the way people need to think of it is it's not a rule. It is very rare that there is a manager sitting there with STAR written down on paper and waiting for you to check all of those things off as you go through. But that is how good stories get told. Think about any good story and you know what the situation of the story was, you know what somebody did in the story, and you know what happened because of the story. It is a framework for staying on track. And I think the more people think of it, the better that can be. Right. And people have repackaged it 100 times. You can hear somebody talk about the BAR method, which is behavior action result, and the CAR method, context action result, and the CARL method, contact action result language. I had to invent my own one day. My publisher made me to put into a book. Like it's all made up stuff, but it's all an effort to help you stay on task telling your story. And when we talk about in the frames of like the core four stories, it's the idea of like think of a good story like a tree, and you have your main story, which is this big tree trunk. And this is what I did. And there's different branches that go up from that, right? Like I had a great success and this great thing happened. And some of the details are more relevant in some situations than they are in others. So you start a story with like, here's the branch, here's what was going on, or here's the trunk, here's what was going on. And then this is the branch I want to take you down because that's relevant to what you asked me and what we're talking about. And then this little twig that comes off of it is what happened like next because of that. And that's a way you can revisit those stories a lot because you can always start at that trunk and go off to a different branch, on a different kind of question to talk about what mattered. And when you don't talk about what is on every single branch of that tree, you stop rambling, right? You stick to what you needed to talk about. And that is where prepping that story really comes in. So you're ready to just say, here's what happened, here's what I did, here's why it mattered. Now let's dig in further if you want, rather than making them stare at you for 10 minutes as you just jump all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good insight. Um, this one is also on the top with interviewing. No matter how much you prep, sometimes nerves get the best of us and things fall apart a little bit. So this one asks, I prep for my interviews, but when I show up, I always feel like I'm floundering. Any advice?
It's a great question. So if you always feel like you're floundering on interviews, what I typically say, and this isn't to like blow you off because I know you said you prep well, right? There's two things. There's prep and there's comfortability. Um, and most comfortability comes from being well prepared. Now, I get it. Not everybody performs their best in an interview, and believe it or not, most people who are good at a job are not getting dinged on interviews because they're not great at interviewing. They're not losing the job because they stumbled a little and they tripped over their words or whatever it might be. So I think it's important to keep in mind. The other thing is, I think it's like um, you need to be able, and again, this is where STAR and these prep ideas come from. You need to be confident that I've done these things. I know this about myself, and I can talk about these things as they come up. There will always be bad interviewers. There will always be a-hole hiring managers who try to make you uncomfortable in an interview, unfortunately. I've gone viral showing before where I recorded a job interview I was on because I was making different content about this job interview. And on it, it became very clear this manager like didn't want to hire me and they were being like aggressive and tough with me. Um, and
Wow.
and it was tough. Like
Yeah.
that happens, but that's the exception, right? That's not the rule in most of these cases. You're nervous because it's high stakes because you're trying to get a job. You'll never be able to take that away. I can't tell like the average person how to be less anxious. Right? It would be so disingenuous to be like, here's how you don't be anxious on an important job interview. But what you can control is how ready you are to talk about the stuff you need to talk about. And that's where you can focus your time.
Right. Are there any ways you can, in the event you answer something incorrectly and you want to correct what you said, are there any sorts of tips and tricks on how to kind of roll that response back where it's not disruptive or it really and in the event helps you kind of save the interview in a sense?
Uh, yeah, it's a good question. So how, you can recover from a mistake on a job interview. It is possible to do. Will it work every time? Of course not. Like I said from the beginning, nothing will. But sometimes just calling that out matters, right? Here we go, right? Circle back to it. Ask to circle back to it.
Knew
You're
that was
allowed
coming
to,
through.
yeah, like I can't believe I didn't get to say circle back yet. I finally got there. But circle back to it, and what I mean by that is like it is okay during a job interview to say something and then realize like, oh, I wish I said it differently or kind of brought up a different point and say like, hey, while we're pausing or in between this question or whatever, I realized when you asked me about XYZ that I said this, and just kind of thinking about it further, I think I really wanted to try and drive home that like this is what happened or wherever it can be. Like, uh, is it going to save a terrible interview? No. But are they going to be happy to hear you provide a little bit more insight to something that it's very possible they were thinking, oh, I wish I had more insight to that as well. Yeah, absolutely. But like that has to be on you to do. That has to be on you to pause and kind of go back there. Stop the interview, circle back to it. The other thing I talk about is what I call like a pause and pivot idea, which is kind of just like, you know, take a beat during the interview and pivot to what you want to talk about or what you want it to be. Obviously, it's supposed to be on track, but like you can steer a conversation a little bit on a job interview to be about the important things as long as you are still answering what you need to be answering on this interview. So don't be scared to take a little bit of control. It's their interview. They're going to run with it, of course. I don't mean just steer the whole ship, but it is okay to say, like, hey, do you mind if I dig in a little bit further to what I talked about here? And they'll generally be happy to hear that. And you're going to be better off doing that live in the interview than wishing you did it and like waiting for the rejection email or the feedback to come in and like, oh, actually, I wanted to expand on that. Can I do it now? Again, when we talk about like stop playing it so safe, take a little bit of a risk. Is it a little bit risky to pause an interview and try and get them to go back to a topic you already covered? Sure, I guess. But if you also think not doing that's going to cost you the job, I don't know, what the issue is in trying.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's switch gears a little bit here to, maybe following up in negotiation. We talked a little bit about that earlier. When a recruiter gives a specific follow-up deadline, like you'll hear from me Monday and misses it, how long should I wait to reach out? What's the best etiquette to follow without coming across as pushy?
Yeah. Um, it's a really good question, right? How do you follow up with a hiring manager or recruiter without being pushy? It's something I get asked all the time. And the truth is, right, like you have to play it cool a little bit, right? I know this ruffles feathers sometimes, or especially if I use the word desperate. I get it. Everyone's desperate for a job. Everyone has to work, right? But I have a friend, Erin Riska. She's another great recruiter, and she said this great one time where she said, "You have to be hungry and not thirsty." And like what she really means with that is just like, okay, so they said you were going to hear from them Friday. You didn't hear from them Friday. Okay, things happen. We get busy. We've all been busy at work. We've all missed a Friday. Monday comes, you send a quick email. Hey, still really excited about the opportunity. I'm sure things got busy last week. Just wanted to kind of check in, see how things were going, and reiterate that I'm really excited about this opportunity. Like whatever you want to say in this, and I have better templates, but thinking about them live is a little bit different. But you do it right, and then you're done. And this is the part that I really need to tell people, right? Like you want to not be pushy, don't be pushy. Like it's okay to follow up once. I usually say after an interview, follow up within a day or two of the interview to reiterate you're excited, thank them, blah, 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 all that stuff. And right, we can argue about thank you emails or whatever, but like you do it, okay. Then like a week goes by, you can do a follow up in a week or after a missed deadline in this situation, right? You do the one follow up and then you sit on your hands. But don't sit on your hands. Keep job searching. All right, keep applying and doing all the things you were doing. Don't sit on your hands waiting for this job. Um, if it comes, great. But what I always sort of tell people is like, should ghosting happen? No, absolutely. But like, does ghosting happen? Yes, it does. Unfortunately, it happens all the time. So until you have an answer from this company, you assume the answer is no. So you follow up, you do that, and you wait because the truth is they didn't forget you if they were going to hire you. Right? I've never in my life just been like, oh shoot, I was gonna hire Ashley, but I forgot to get back to her. Or that just like it doesn't happen that way. Is it irresponsible? Right? It shouldn't happen that way. Sure, but so much internet discourse is talking about how things, how we wish things were when we talk about how they are. If you got ghosted, whatever. So the answer to this really is follow up after the missed deadline or after a week, and then you wait. And if they get back to you a month later, you get to make the decision. You're still interested in that email where they followed up a month later, or you're not. Maybe you're off the market because you kept job searching, right? Whatever it is. Asking them over and over and over again, like doesn't really win people jobs. I have my own story. It's in my book. I'm not here to plug my book, right? But it's in there. And the reason I bring it up and I line up this story is I really wanted this job. This is a job I wanted so bad, and I was so desperate. Like through this whole process, and it's embarrassing. Like looking back at it, like I emailed these people all the time, constantly on Fridays and Mondays, and I was learning about them. I was like, I hope your marathon went well, right? And just like these emails over and over again. And I sent something like 17 emails like over like the span of the process, and I have a lot of them like word for word in there. Is why I bring it up. I didn't get the job. I don't know that I talked myself out of the job, right? I can't say that's why I didn't get hired, but I didn't pressure them into hiring me if that's what I was hoping to do.
Yeah, I wanted to pull out two things you said earlier. You mentioned ghosting. And when we were talking in the pre-interview too, we talked about like there's a lot happening behind the scenes in the hiring process. So it would be great if you could give some perspective to our audience because there are people out there who've been searching for some time And the reality of the situation is not all of the responsibility falls on the recruiter. There's a lot of participants in this hiring process. So I think providing some clarity there. And I think the other topic that was interesting to me is the timeline. What timeline should people expect when they're starting this job search so they can manage their expectations and not burn themselves out?
Yeah, no, it's that's fair. Let's talk hiring timelines and what's realistic. The big quick answer is it can change all the time. It can vary by company and size and all sorts of things. But what I think people need to keep in mind when we talk about these timelines is everyone is busy. Uh, that can sound callous. Are they too busy for me and I need a job? Like maybe, but you have to remember, right, that like a hiring manager's job isn't hiring people. They're managing a team, they're managing deadlines and reports and whatever else they do. And when you're working and you get busy, every week feels like it went by in an hour. Versus when you're unemployed and looking for a job, right? Every hour feels like it's a week. And those two vastly different feelings make such a huge impact. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. So as you think through a process, right? You apply for a job, a company opens up a job, and let's just say what happens is within a few days, a lot of applications come in, and it takes time to go through and figure out those applications and start to sort of rank people and start to set up interviews. And let's just say I decide to interview 10 people, right? Is a hard number. I picked my 10 people I'm going to interview, and that took me a few days to sort of be able to really rank and do right on top of the other things I was doing. Then I have to set up an interview with 10 people, and I schedule the interviews. Then I have to figure out who we're moving forward to the next step. And that takes a few days to get those people set up with the interviews. So even in a perfect process, you're talking a couple weeks for most jobs, just because of the fact that like this is one small thing that everybody's doing. Small to them, huge to you. I get it. But this is one thing that everybody's doing throughout the week. So you're talking a couple week process of looping everybody in. Then we start to talk about the reality of what it's like in the corporate world and what work is like. And guess what? Guess what happens at most jobs? Things come up, fires get lit, deadlines and priorities shift. And a lot of times people hear this and they think that the recruiter is just sort of like jerking you around a little bit, right? Just like, oh, they don't know what they're doing there. I can't tell you how many times I've been working with a hiring manager who wants to hire a role and they're really excited about this role. And then a huge project drop, right? A huge client called and wants to cancel the contract because of what's going on. And now this is all hands on deck to fix this. And this interview is getting pushed out by a week or two because of it. And then we move to the next stage and, an executive sign off, except it's August. And, the executive is now on a 2-week vacation. And that sucks for you. And you might think they're disrespecting you, but they had planned their 2-week vacation before they ever heard your name. Right. It has nothing to do with you. Right. And then we get to the final stages and we need finances sign off and the finance guy isn't there. Right. Or another contract dried up. And I just think that like there's so many moving parts all the time that you have to keep that in mind, like decenter yourself from the universe. Right. Like this job being hired is one small thing in a giant, however, depending on how big the company is, 1,000,000,000 billion-dollar like enterprise happening. So it's going to be a couple weeks when running as smooth as possible. And we all know in the real world, nothing ever runs as smooth as possible.
Yeah. So on that note, what is a common misconception that people have about recruiters? I think you talked a little bit about it a minute ago, but I'd love to get your hot take on that.
Yeah, common misconceptions people have about recruiters. There are so many of them, but here's the most important one to understand. I wish I was like one quarter as powerful as people on the internet think I am. I don't have any power. My kids don't listen to me. My hiring managers don't listen to me. Like nobody listens to me. Even the people who follow me on the internet and ask me for advice still argue with me about my advice. But you talk to people about recruiting and they talk about recruiters like we are setting this billion-dollar company's budgets for roles, like we are making decisions about if a salary gets posted or not. I would love to post salaries on every job. If you want salary transparency, write your representatives. Go talk to the government about getting salary transparency enacted in your state. What has never happened in a company anywhere is an executive say, I would like us to post salaries, and a recruiter say, no, we're not going to do that. Right? Recruiters don't determine how many steps are going to be in an interview process very often, right? We can talk about it. We can say this feels like a lot. We can do this. But if a hiring manager for my team says, I want Joe from accounting to meet this person before I hire them, then Joe from accounting is going to meet that person, right? I didn't say go get Joe from accounting. Like that's what it's going to be. And that comes into again with salaries and all these sort of factors. I hear a ton. Why do recruiters refuse to hire people who have a gap? Or right, and we can talk about career gaps as its own thing, and I talk a lot about sort of how to deal with career gaps. But again, I don't care how long your gap is, because the truth is you're not working on my team in almost all these instances, right? But I am working with a manager who is trying to hire someone based on who they want for their team. And my job is to advise them and to offer why I think this is a good idea, why it's not. But if I know a manager is going to say, I will not hire someone who has been out of work for a year, I can say that's not a good way to hire. And they can say, like, cool recruiter, go out and find me those people, right? They don't have to listen to me. It's their team. But what that means is I'm not going to pass them candidates who've been out of work for over a year, not because I don't like those candidates, but because I know the manager is not going to hire and interview and move forward with those candidates. They've made it very clear. So the biggest misconception, honestly, about recruiters is like you think we're creating all these rules and hurdles and all these things, and like so many other people, we're all cogs in a corporate wheel, which I know sounds like a big excuse. But I'm just, corporate decisions do not get made by one person in most cases. And if they do, it's not me.
So have a little patience with your recruiter, you know.
Yeah, and there's terrible recruiters. I get it. You want to blast them,
Yeah.
go for it, right? There are terrible ones, but like it is recruiters very much have become sort of the scapegoat both inside and outside of the company for like this hiring process isn't going right. Because we're the face, we're the public image. We may be the only person you see in this whole process or talk to in this whole process. But trust me, the executives and everyone up there has realized this too, and they are happy to let me be the face out there, taking the reaction to the decisions that are being made.
The scapegoat, Mike Pedito.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. Well, we've covered how playing it safe is backfiring in this market, the online advice to ignore, how to prepare for an interview and leave a lasting impression. But I'm curious, people love a system when they're thinking about their job search. So what's your favorite framework or mnemonic for the job search? We talked a little bit about the core four and the STAR method, but like if there's kind of one, Mike Pedito-ism to leave our audience with, what would it be?
Um, the framework from Mike Pedito is that you do not need a framework for getting a job. Right? Like frameworks are things people create to sell you something. I mean, that's what frameworks generally are. Right. And yes, the core four method, you could say that's a framework, sure. But again, like these are just four stories I think they're going to help you. We talked about the STAR method, sure. And like I said, I joke because in my book, they're like, you can't do STAR. You have to reinvent it if you're going to be in a book. And I called it the STAR Plus. And then I just like added a little bit to it. And I called that out in the book that says like, are you happy now, publishers? Right. Like, I don't think, I don't think that's the right strategy for finding a job is trying to find the right framework for it. Right. The best way to get a job is all of the things that you've heard combined and understanding that the odds are always going to be on very low percent of every job you see that you get it because that's the market right now, right? Like when 500 people apply for a job, it's just like a rough number, and one person gets hired, statistically, like 0% of people are getting hired for roles when one out of every 500 is doing it. And I think it's important to sort of keep that in mind. So it doesn't mean you don't prep. It doesn't mean you don't do these things. Of course, you try and get better at answering questions. You try and figure out the kind of resume you're going to write. You try and figure out, how do I get the attention of a hiring manager? When I hear questions like, does this work? Does this work? Is this like a good idea? In most cases, the answer is yes, it can, but it's not the thing. So I always shy away a little bit from just like, here's my favorite mnemonic device to use. Here's my favorite framework to use, right? It's just sort of like, keep busting your ass and trying to get a job because it sucks right now. Understand that like some advice is better than others, but like you stop looking for the magic way.
Yeah, aside from like some of your interview tactics, what do you think is the best advice out there right now?
It's a good question. The best advice for finding a job right now is to stop being scared to lose the job and start trying to win the job. Which is sort of what I started with here, right? Because like none of this is guaranteed. But again, like I, so much pushback I hear from people is like, well, if I do that, they might not hire me. And it's just like, yeah, again, they're probably not going to hire you. And I tell those people, like, I hope you get every job you apply for and you interview for, but you're probably not gonna, right? The odds just
We're
say
not in
you're
that
not going
market
to.
anymore. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
not in
the
that
math
market.
says you have a small percentage chance of getting this next job you apply to, no matter what you do. And understanding that is really important, right? That you have to wrap your head around that framework, yeah, around that math, and really get it. It doesn't make it feel better, but like you have to know it. Um, and I think it's just like so stop being scared of like doing something differently or trying something. And I hear the people who say like I shouldn't have to. You're right, and you don't have to. But again, we're talking about just like things you can try to do. Right. So you're trying to not lose the job by saying, I don't have to. But somewhere out there is someone trying to win that job. And when you say, like, well, I'm not going to do that thing that they did, it's fine. You're not going to go to jail. Right. You're just probably not going to be the person who won that job.
Yeah. Yeah. Managing your expectations is critical in this market. And that would be the difference between someone who gets frustrated, overwhelmed, and burns out, and the other person who has the get up and go to continue pushing forward after many, many no's. So, yeah, thanks, Mike. There's so many more questions I could ask you. Our audience has really brought it today, but unfortunately, we kind of need to wrap up. So I promised them a
I
rapid
talk a lot.
fire round where we could get your hot takes on some of the hottest topics in job search right now. I think you mentioned one of them when we were talking just a couple minutes ago. So I'm going to ask you a series of 3 questions. Whatever answer comes to mind, just say it quickly. Are you ready?
I'll try.
Okay, great.
Quick is not
Okay.
my specialty, but let's try.
No, maybe you'll deliver on this
I
one.
can
All
do it. I
right.
can do it.
Okay. What's one thing that would disqualify a candidate immediately?
Making up that they knew somebody in the company or had some type of education or job history that they don't have.
Wow, great. What's a trend in hiring that needed to die yesterday?
Asking people why do they want to work here in the first 5 minutes of their interview.
What's an acceptable form of lying on your resume?
Right. I always say there are lies and there's lies. Some of the lies are your job title, right? It's okay to make it sound like a more standard format that goes across the industry. It's okay to be off a little bit on dates or a month or two. Nobody really knows every day that they exactly work somewhere. It's okay to be a little bit off on exactly what you were really responsible for at a job to an extent, right? The difference between 5 and 10%, the difference between doing these things. So these little things that aren't about hard facts that can be verified, they're fine.
I like your reaction. There are lies and there are lies.
Yeah. And you know the difference between a lie and a lie.
I love that. Thank you so much for that, Mike. We are going to wrap because we're a little bit over time, but just really quickly, I would love for audience to hear from you where they can find you if you want to pitch your book right now. It's got a wealth of knowledge that I'm sure our audience can use right now.
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Mike Pedito. I'm there. If you are a TikTok or Instagram user, you can find me usually being a little less LinkedIn-y at Realistic Recruiting. You can find my book, which is called Yes, You're Being Judged. It's a realist guide to job searching. If you like the way I speak, it's me in written form. You will have no doubt I wrote it. And those are some of the best ways to find me. If you're a recruiter out there for some reason, you can come on the podcast. Is this still a good time? Which is for recruiters hanging on by a thread. If you are a job searcher, you don't want to hear what we're saying on that podcast.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mike. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to our producer, Caitlin and Autumn, who's been in the chat, chatting with you and moderating today's discussion. And for our audience who really showed up for this one, you sent amazing questions in advance. And we really appreciate you sharing your challenges right now because it's a tough market and we need to help each other out. So thank you for being here. A couple quick things. We would love for you to take the survey on our screen. So just scan the QR code and tell us how we did today. And follow Glassdoor on LinkedIn so you won't miss our next show. So thank you again for attending Ask a Recruiter Live, where we help you navigate a job market that no longer plays by the rules. Bye, everyone.
All right, thank you.